From where I am right now is 7 o'clock Kenyan time. I'm seated in Kenya. I would like to thank the organizing committee, Madam Councillor for Africa International Society for Environmental Epidemiology. And I've just taken note that this is the 11th meeting. So this is a very vibrant society, I must say. It is also quite exciting that I would be talking, giving this talk, particularly environmental health. My training is in chemistry, environmental chemistry, analytical chemistry. So I am very, very much at home with this society, with the epidemiology, environmental epidemiology. Now let's come back to where I am now currently. So I'm now the acting executive director of the African Academy of Sciences. And I would want to share with you briefly just the background of the African Academy of Sciences. As you indicated, Madam Chair, that I need to talk about the vision of the African Academy of Sciences, even as I go towards the programs that we run at the African Academy of Sciences. But this is my conduct. Before joining the African Academy of Sciences in 2017, I used to work for University of Johannesburg, where I was there for 6 years, and previously I was also at University of KwaZulu-Natal, both in South Africa and previously University of Botswana. But I come from Kenya, so I'm back in Kenya now. And when I got back to Kenya, I worked in Kenya, and then after a short while, that's how I ended up in the African Academy of Sciences as the acting executive director. So I would want to talk about, like I said, the African Academy of Sciences, the background, the strategic and business planning, and also the research management. How do we do it, particularly the principles? And very quickly, I saw many people do confuse the African Academy of Sciences as if it's an institution like a university or research center. No, we are not a research center, and we are not a university. I can say we are a network of professors, researchers, professionals in different areas that came together to form the network. But briefly, I will be talking about that. Let me just go to the rest of the points that I want to raise. And so therefore, the role of the AS in the continent, I will also bring that one to the fore. But when I looked at your objectives, I saw that you want to identify major environmental health problems in the region. That is excellent. To promote epidemiological research in environmental epidemiology also in the region, that is Africa region, and also to promote research and also interact. So when I looked at the objectives, I could see that the objectives do fall under the broad areas of the African Academy of Sciences strategic focus. Now, about the African Academy of Sciences, the vision for the African Academy of Sciences is to transform lives through science. And the mission is to leverage resources through research excellence and also thought leadership towards sustainable development. One thing is that the AS is the only continental academy with members drawn from the 55 countries in Africa. And for that reason, we are recognized by the African Union, and we also have MOU with African Union to implement some of the programs, such as priority number 2 of the Science, Technology and Innovation agenda for African Union. As you know, the African Union has got Agenda 2063, which is a broad area, the equivalent of the United Nations SDGs. But then underneath that, they break it into various sections or classifications. And one of the classifications is the STI. So the STI agenda is 2024. They must attain certain areas. And so priority number 2 is then health, research, and innovation. And that is where we have got MOU with African Union so that we can be able to implement health-related and innovation areas. And because of that, we signed MOU with African Union and we have got a joint venture because, as you remember, the African Union Development Agency, AUDA, is the agency that helps the African Union to implement STI priority areas. And now they call it AUDA NEPAD. That is African Union Development Agency, New Partnership for African Development, which is, of course, touches on several governments. And so therefore, the African Academy of Sciences talks to different governments for various reasons, obviously research related. So when we come to basically the details of the African Academy of Sciences, it is a non-aligned, non-political, not-for-profit organization. And the headquarters is in Nairobi because the founding fellows of the African Academy of Sciences, one of the leaders was Professor Thomas Odhiambo. Thomas Odhiambo comes from Kenya. He was also the professor that started ISEE. ISEE is the International Center for Insect Research. And then, of course, together with other fellows, notably Nigerian professors, Ethiopia, and many other area countries, that they came together to say, let's form a network. And so when they formed the network, they came up with a constitution and decided that they should, because it's a continental academy, to have offices in the 5 regions of Africa, that is Southeast, Central, West, and North. And so the African Academy of Sciences has got a tripartite mandate, which is to recognize excellence, and that is one of them. Advisory think tank, because we talk to the African Union, they want us to come up with policy, and therefore we have to brainstorm on how these policies can be articulated and developed. And we also, because by virtue of the fact that it's a network of professors and academicians and researchers and so forth, then we also, in our own rights as African Academy of Sciences, our fellows do projects on STI programs. They are involved in so many areas in terms of either projects that they're implementing as well as advisory roles. Then in 2015, the African Academy of Sciences had a discussion with African Union, and that is when a declaration was made in 2015 January to implement, officially now to implement the platform which we call the Alliance for Accelerating Excellence in Science in Africa. But that platform talks to health, research, and innovation. But later we expanded it, to be the continental agenda setting as well as business planning, because it is that center that is usually, or the platform that is usually funded whenever any international funder or even regional funder wants to fund Africa researchers. One of the places they come to is African. When they go to African Union, they are usually told, go to African Academy of Sciences. You will find a well-established a platform where you can be able to sign MOU agreements, grant agreements, and so forth and so on. So we do receive quite a substantial funding that comes to Africa. It comes to African researchers, but through the African Academy of Sciences. So we are an agency. We are not an institution. We are not a university. It's just a network, but that network is recognized, and therefore the platform helps in terms of raising money, in terms of writing proposals, soliciting funding from various corners. And so therefore we say that our vision, like I said before, is to transform lives through science. Now, going forward, I'm sure you are curious to know how are we set. We have got a General Assembly, and Madam Chair, you did talk about the ISEE, how it is structured. So likewise, I would want to talk about how ISEE is structured, how AS is structured. And so we have got a General Assembly. Basically, the General Assembly, this constitutes of the fellows themselves. So these 500 fellows who are drawn from various research areas, could be policy, could be social sciences, could be chemical sciences and biological sciences, engineering, and so forth. So we've got about 500 fellows, and they form what we call the General Assembly then. And the General Assembly sits every 3 years, they elect a governing council. So we've got a governing council of about 11 members. So we have got a president, a secretary general, and the treasurer. Treasurer is normally from Kenya because of by virtue of the fact that our headquarters is in Nairobi. So therefore, the treasurer, when it comes to transacting funding of funds, then the treasurer then can be reached easily. Now, apart from those three, what we call the officials, the governing council officials, that is president, treasurer, and the secretary general. We also have vice presidents, 5 of them. So that makes it 8. And then we also have African Union representative who sits there. That is the director of HRSTI in the African Union Commission. And then we have got, by virtue of the fact that we are registered in Kenya, according to the NGO stipulation, we must have nominated members, council members from Kenya. And so they make a third of the total. And so in total, right now, currently, we have got 11 council members. Now, the council members then come together and they put a secretariat. So they put a secretariat where the secretariat is headed by the executive director, and that is where I come in. So I'm acting the executive director who is heading the secretariat. And under the executive director, we have got directors, we've got program managers, program officers, accountants, typical departments such as the Department of HR, Human Resource, Legal, Finance, Communication, so forth and so on. Now, in addition to that, we also have committees, what we call the Subject Membership Advisory Committees. These are the committees.
Hello. Hello, how are you? I'm fine, sir.
So these are the committees that the membership advisory committees are committees that are aligned to the subject areas. So we have got about 10 subject areas: climate change, health and well-being, research in STEM, and so forth and so on, as indicated there. We also, of course, have the typical academic fields, geological, environmental, engineering, policies, and so forth. Now, I talked about the 500 fellows. The fellows, we have got different categories of the fellows. We have got founding fellows, we have got honorary fellows, we have got associate fellows. Associate fellows are non-Africans. Say somebody from Canada who is very interested in Africa and research in Africa or related other areas, then that person, by virtue of their interest in African activities and research, they can also be nominated as associate fellows. Then we also have affiliates. Affiliates these are early career researchers. Early career researchers are people who have finished their PhD and probably they are doing their postdoctoral, or they have finished their postdoctoral and they are lecturers in various institutions. The honorary fellows, some of notable honorary fellows, His Excellency, the former president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, also Congo, His Excellency Nguesso, and we also have Botswana president and many others. It's not just president, we also have notable speakers such as like Professor Lumumba, who I think many people probably is familiar because he likes to talk about Africa, our continent, and where we are going wrong. And many others, ministers who have made a difference in the continent, not just in their countries. And so these are the honorary fellows. And these are the statistics. As always, women still are not very many. The number of women fellows about less than 20%, and that really continues to concern. But when you also look at globally, when you look at women in science or women academics or women in leadership, you realize that this percentage is really very much in line with what other areas are showing. So it is a challenge that women really have to continue, trying to reach the heights, so that, and it looks like I've got a problem with stop sharing because it has moved. I need to come back to it. What I have is the problem with with the mouse moving. Normally, when you stay for long without moving it, it doesn't want to move. So probably that is what is happening. But nevertheless, I will try to see whether I can get to the slide. All right, it has now agreed to move. So I talked about the center or the platform that is owned. It is owned by African Union, and we have MOU with them. We call it Alliance for Accelerating Excellence in Science. It has got about 4 goals. We have got 4 goals at ISEE. We call it in briefly ISEE, which is building research leadership and environment, the supporting development of innovations and entrepreneurship, and also identifying, supporting rising researchers, research leaders. And then continuously, we have to identify critical gaps in the research landscape. So those are the 4 areas or strategic areas of ISEE. Now, when it comes to the programs, first and foremost, we've got, we try to promote as much as possible research in institutions, how to have international standards on research management, because it is very, very important to look at the institutional leadership, sustainability standards, and individual capacity. So, for example, you have managed to get a big grant, let's say from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and now the grant comes to institution X, and that institution, they do not have institutional leadership, they don't have the infrastructure. So the staff, even though the staff probably is very well qualified and has got a good track record in terms of research, they won't go far because they don't have the support, the institutional support. So we are very keen in trying to grow and also develop institutional capacity in various organizations and universities and centers, particularly where researchers are seated. So such that when you are given a grant, like I have given an example, before you get that grant, they must evaluate to find out whether the institution where you are can be able to implement that grant. And so you might be a very good researcher, but if your institution cannot support you, then it is difficult for you to get the grant, because the grant goes to the institution, doesn't go to individuals. But when it goes to the institutions, then it can be channeled now. The principal researchers then benefit through their institutions. So these are some of the areas that we are very keen on. We also try to promote collaborations within African universities as well, and research institutions, as well as across. And we will talk about how to the global south, which is our African and many other continents, how the global south must partner with the global north, because as we know, the global north has got some advantages because of the infrastructures are well developed, programs are well developed, processes are well developed. So we have to continue partnering with them, a partnership between global north and global south. Capacity building using evidence-based benchmarking, African leadership, which is as to support global expertise, building on existing structures, long-term approach to research, and these are things that I've just mentioned about the REMFRO program that we are running. We also have another program which we call the Good Research Management Practice, or GRC, or GFGP, which is basically a good financial grant practice. For example, let's say institution X gets money, and they decide, instead of going according to the grant stipulation, what the grant says you must do, you change the story, how the money is managed. Instead of supporting maybe postgraduate students, masters and PhD, you put the money in other things. Now that is bad financial grant practice, and it can be cancelled. Funders do cancel these grants, particularly if the researcher receives the money and does not comply with the stipulations. And so at the African Academy of Sciences, we've got a platform where institutions, various institutions in Africa can register so that they go through training on how to have good financial grant practice, particularly funded projects. The good research management practice provide universities and research institutions with assessment. Say institution B or X or Z, they apply to African Academy of Sciences so that they can be evaluated, assessed to see whether they meet the standards, because we've got standards. And so we do that. We assess and say, okay, this is the criteria of assessment. We tick, we say, now it looks like you comply. So now you can get a certificate to certify you that, or certification that you actually meet the good research management practice. I talked about the Global North and Global South. Majority of the programs that are funded actually go to promoting early career researchers, but that is not the only funding that we get. We also have well-established researchers. You are a well-established researcher in your own rights. You've got your own research group, and you are training, you are mentoring, and so forth. And so you also get money. But like I said, majority of the programs are going towards early career research development, where the development also comes with mentorship. We talk about the vertical supervisor-mentee relations, where you're an established researcher and you have got an early career researcher, so you mentor them until they get to the stage where they can call themselves established researchers. And of course, within that mentorship program, we also have peer-to-peer, partnerships, so that, let's say I'm an early career researcher, I can travel to University of Ibadan and find my fellow or peer who is doing research in similar areas, and we can be able to share ideas. So that is also promoted because that is strengthening peer-to-peer mentoring is very, very crucial. Some of the programs that we run that are funded, like for example, Human Hereditary Health in Africa, or H3 Africa, is a program that was initiated in 2010 by the National Institute of Health in the US, Wellcome Trust, and the African Society of Human Genetics. Now, this program, it has funded quite a number of projects in different universities in Africa. We also have another program, we call it Developing Excellence in Leadership and Training and Science in Africa, or Delta Africa. Again, the goal of this is to produce researchers with the capacity to publish and lead locally relevant high-quality research, funded by, again, similar organizations, Wellcome Trust, UK DFID, nowadays we call it FCDO, that is Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, and also many other funders. We have another program, Climate Change, Climate Impact Research Capacity Building, or SACO. Again, a program that is funded, and this is just to train the early career researchers. Climate Research for Development, this program is just winding up, and it had funded, I think we had quite a number of fellows, I think 180, I can't remember, who were being trained, and they had grants that were doing investigations, research on climate-related matters. Other programs such as the African Regional Initiatives in Science and Education, or ARISE, which is a postdoctoral program, fellowship. Future Leaders, Africa Independent Research, or FLAIR. Unfortunately, this program has come to an end, or it is just about to end, because the UK government funding went down, it was slashed, and it was funded by Royal Society. So as a result of that, now we have to wind up the FLAIR programs. It was a very, very popular program that has funded quite a number of early career researchers. African Postdoctoral Training Initiative, or APTI, which is funded by the US National Institutes of Health in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This program is still going. It is again training postdoctoral, particularly in health. That's why they go to National Institute of Health in the US. We also have different other programs, like for example, the affiliate program, which are already affiliates. People apply to be African Academy of Sciences affiliates. And so when you get into that program, you can get funded for 5 years, during which you grow your own timber, and you can be able to be a leader in research in your own rights. We have got other programs such as Science and Language Mobility. This is a program that promotes Anglo-Africa and Francophone Africa to exchange because of language barrier. That is just it. The aim is to exchange. We also have another one with the India, Africa-India Mobility Fund. Again, this is funded by Wellcome Trust and the Department of Biotechnology in the government of India. And so we get a number of people, they travel to India, Indian, also they come to Africa, could be in Nigeria, in Kenya, South Africa, or wherever. And then we have got the most recent program that we have is Africa Research Initiatives for Scientific Excellence. This is funded by European Union in partnership with African Union. And this is, it is just started this year, and it will go for 5 years. And it is funding across all areas, early career researchers, established researchers, all fields could be climate, social sciences, humanities, so forth and so on. We have got community and public engagement funds, and this money really comes to train people. This, you can say these are soft skills that probably how to write grants. We look at needs and gaps analysis, particularly when it comes to the funded programs. You say, this program has been funded, but the staff, even though the staff appears to have what it requires, I mean, the requisite conditions, but they also need to be strengthened in one or two things. So we call that one community and public engagement, so that also how to do presentations. It could be people have just finished their PhDs, how do you write proposals? So these are programs that we try to also, we get funding to do that. Strengthen capacity and advocacy for the community engagements. And this is just an example of some of the efforts where we are strengthening capacity, which we aim at grant holders. And the grant holders could be actually not necessarily the student or the supervisor, could be mentors, consortia of leaderships, and so forth, people already funded by already existing programs. So all these are areas, or should I say, recipients, people who can benefit from the CP funding. We also have the open science and open access, which we might reduce its scope because, again, funding slashing because it's funded by the UK, some of the organizations in the UK. Whereby people who are fellows and affiliates can use the platform to publish and also access journals that are not easily available, in their respective institutions. So that is the other area. Now I'm coming almost towards the end, and basically I just wanted to share how do we build networks. And when you look across, you realize that you build networks, your own networks in your own research field by attending international conferences. For some of who have listened to my presentation probably will now know that, the African Academy of Sciences actually can provide funding. So you go to the website and start checking to see whether we have got adverts. You collaborate through international, if you appear, you sit in international committees, or even having these Zoom meetings, like I've just said. You must have online presence, particularly now during the sabbatical, during the COVID lockdown. Again, when you look at across, some of the funding that we receive, they cut across 17 sustainable development. So it talks about climate change, health, education, gender, and so forth and so on. And of course, when we recently we were just having a workshop where we are saying that funders, even when they fund, like particularly the UK research and innovation, they are now looking into gender-related or having diversity, trying to make sure that the funding that is coming to Africa and going to different institutions has to look into issues of diversity in the individual institutions, so forth and so on. Policies that are there in terms of how do you train, how do you mentorship, gender parity, equity, diversity, inclusions, and so forth and so on. Because it's not just enough to fund me to do chemistry or to do environmental health. You also have to fund so that I develop skills, soft skills, collaboration, tips on how to do collaborations and so forth and so on. Now, this slide is simply just some of the tips post-pandemic future. How are we going to manage our lives? Because we don't know. We are now, I think in Kenya, we are third wave. In South Africa, I think they are either fourth wave, and different other countries are in different waves. So again, this is a big concern, and the more, very, very important for us to develop digital expertise skills so that we can be able to cope with what is happening. And I do remember when COVID, when it was announced, particularly in Africa in March last year, many institutions to go teaching online, virtual teaching, and so forth. The African Association of African Universities is very good at that. They usually have workshops every week to train on various things. It could be virtual teaching, online, and so forth and so on. So these are some of the tips. What about the laboratory-based research during COVID? How can you manage to continue with research when you know you can't go to the lab? And so we were saying that, and this is a conversation we had with Michigan and a team of core facility network that's a partner with the African Academy of Sciences, that during the lockdown, that's when postgraduates and also researchers do their literature review. You collect a lot of information. There's pre-training on various materials, you know, so that you have got those skills that normally we take for granted before you actually go to the laboratory to do research. Yeah, so basically we don't wait until everything opens up. We have to adapt, and I think this has been said over and over again by various organizations. And I like to share always this, that in order to create something meaningful, we must create something significant. And there's nothing that is great that is ever achieved by doing things the same way we have always done them. Because now with COVID, of course, we have now changed how we do things. And so we must challenge the status quo. We must also take one fearless choice and say, well, I'm going to be brave enough to make a decision to move forward and be courageous, take one action at a time. Yeah, when it comes to patenting, particularly if you want to patent intellectual property and related, these are just tips again. You need to describe the ideas or product in detail before you can submit to the IPO office, that is International Innovation Office or Patent Office. Research your ideas before you think about filing the patent, because you can file the patent only to realize that it has already been done by other people. You can patent concepts, you can patent products, you can patent designs, and these are various ways in which one can be able to patent. And I was just looking at one article by Ngudula, who was saying that we need to train PhDs, that is doctoral students, to be thinkers, not just doers, or not just following the same old. That I'm a chemist, I'm in environmental health research. I have done my research. I have passed very well because I have managed to do the exams and all that. No, we have to go beyond that. Put the philosophy back into the doctorate, as she put it. Basically, simply saying that let PhD graduates be innovators and also thinkers. I've come to the end of my presentation. So these membership advisory committees are the ones who go through the nominations or applications that have been submitted. And so they look at the criteria which is set. For example, H-index is one of them, although that this one is always being debated upon, that different research areas or academic fields have got different ways of assessing the H-index. Scientific citizenship. Scientific citizenship here simply means that your activities promote science and knowledge. Sometimes National Research Day, where you give keynote presentations. These are some of the areas. Or you could be teaching, you are teaching and training responsibilities, which goes beyond the classroom. So these are all scientific citizenship. sorry. Then we talk about the scientific leadership. The scientific leadership here simply means that you are an established researcher. As you have your papers, the publications that you have published, who is reading them? Do we have readership? I'm in Kenya and I'm publishing. Do I have people from Nigeria and Ghana, South Africa, and all over the place, not just Africa, but also outside Africa? Do they know, do I have membership? Do I have networks where I'm an established and recognized researcher? So those are areas they look at to say that so-and-so, I think, meets the criteria of being nominated and elected as a fellow. Now, once you are nominated, we call it the long list. From the long list is now the members in various fields. We go through the long list, then the short list based on the criteria. Then from there, the shortlisted people then go through election. That's why we talk about elected fellows. The election is done where, say, for example, my nomination and my CV is floated to the 500 members of the African Academy of Sciences. And they are told, this is the summary of the research output of Catherine Gila, for example. So please, once you have reviewed her profile, you can now elect her as a fellow, where then people are given tables to tick and say, yes, I elect her, and you say the reason. You say the profile is good, she's international, she has met the criteria. So all the members go through that list and they go ticking the people who they qualify to be absorbed or elected as a fellow. After that, now the announcements are done, you are put on the website, there's inauguration that is done, and then you receive your certificate during the inauguration. So that is the process of electing fellows. Affiliates. Affiliates, these are, like I said, young researchers, people have just finished their PhD, you can apply. We advertise for affiliates. What is the advantage of being an affiliate? The advantage is that once you're an affiliate, you stand a good chance of getting funded. If there is funding that is coming to Africa through the African Academy of Sciences, the first priority we look at are our affiliates. There is also a special program for affiliates, where affiliate program is also funded, and is funded to give people research to do their own research, or even attend conferences or attend meetings and so forth. So those are the two categories, the elected fellows and the affiliates. Affiliates, like I said, are the young researchers who have just finished their PhDs.